What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 1, Episode 1, Aang. And I was cautiously optimistic about this show. I've heard decent things, but not anything spectacular. I know it's not as good as the original show, and how could it be? I mean, the original show was not a perfect show, but if we're talking about close to perfect, it's pretty close to perfect. But also, what this show has going for it is because M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong's movie exists, it can't be as bad as that. There's no possible, unless they just absolutely betray everything about the show, it's not going to be that bad. Because, God, that movie's terrible. But anyways, going into this, though, I do know certain things. I do know some things have been changed. I know about Sokka. I know about their journey. I do know some of that. And I will talk about some of the changes, because some of the changes I do think hurt, and then a couple of things I do think sort of help get the story going. So all in all, though, this first episode is fine. But getting into this, first of all, I will talk about some of the negatives, because I'd rather end on a positive note. But obviously the first change that has not affected anything yet, but obviously it's going to, is of course Sokka. And people have already talked about, if you don't start him off as a sexist, then how is he going to grow? You know, how is he going to change and become a better character because of that change? My other thing on top of that is, how's it going to affect his relationship with Suki? Because in my opinion, one of the reasons Suki falls in love with him is because she does see what an asshole he is at first, and then he grows out of that, and she sees him humble himself from that really stupid position that he was on. So I think that's one of the things that makes their relationship so special, and why, in my opinion, they're the best relationship in the original show. But yeah, so I mean, in this first episode, though, we don't really see much of it, but obviously we do see his little army is comprised of both boys and girls. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but yeah, obviously taking the character growth out of a character does make them less interesting. Even if, oh, well, now at least he's not as offensive at the beginning. Okay, but he grows out of that. And taking that growth away from him makes me think that the people who made this show think that people who think that way don't grow, don't change. People can't change. So we're not going to put him in a bad place. We're not going to make him offensive at first. So that way we don't have to deal with the fact that he might change. Because people like that don't change, guys. That's kind of the I guess the subtext that I'm reading coming out of that. But as far as changes that happen in this episode that, in my opinion, do impact the story negatively, I think the first big one, which also relates to something that I do know changes for this overall story for this first season, that is Aang. The reason why he leaves in this show compared to the original, it's vastly changed. Because in the original, we see he finds out he's the Avatar, and his life changes. You know, we see the kids don't want to play with him because they think the games are unfair with him being involved. We see him here that Gyatso is basically, he's not going to be able to see Gyatso anymore because his whole life is going to be uprooted. And for a kid, that's hard to hear. And so he runs away from his responsibility because of that. And for me, that kind of shows what the overarching theme is for each season, is showing how Aang changes throughout the season. And it actually coincides with the overall theme of each of the elements. And in fact, I went ahead and pulled up Iroh's quotes talking about the different elements when he's talking to Zuko. Because if you look at it, it really reflects Aang's journey in each season. The first season, he starts off with air, obviously, which is the element of freedom. Makes sense. He's free. He thinks he doesn't have to worry about his responsibilities, all that. Element of water is the element of change. And we see as the season progresses, he changes. He learns that he does have to accept his responsibility. We see him realize that. And then by the end of it, he's accepted his responsibility as the Avatar. And then the second season, Earth, the element of substance. And he does not only grow in his strength and his power, but he also grows as a character. You know, the whole episode where he's learning about the Avatar state and how to control it and all of that, we see he's truly grown to that point of he's accepting responsibility, and he's truly in his element. He's truly realizing the weight of all the responsibility, and he's brought it on, and he's strong enough to take all of that on as well. And then finally, the final season, Fire, which is the element of power, and that's talking about the will and the strength of kind of the inside. what's inside of you that counts, because that's where their element comes from, is the fire inside of them. And ultimately we see how the inside is turmoil for him throughout most of the season. We see that he's in turmoil because he failed at Ba Sing Se. We see the turmoil of him trying to figure out whether or not he's going to kill Ozai. And by the end of it, his will is strong enough where he finds another path. He finds another route, and ultimately his will overpowers Ozai and allows him to take away his bending. So it shows the growth, though. And a lot of the first season, a lot of the season about water, is about the change and adaptability of Aang, showing how he goes from a kid who doesn't want any responsibility. He's just here to have fun. When he goes to the island of Kyoshi, he loves the praise, loves the adoration, because he's a kid and he's just enjoying himself. He doesn't want to think about the duties of the Avatar. By the end of it, he's ready. When the Fire Nation invades at the North Pole, they have to fight back, all of that, he's fully accepted this is what he has to do. He knows about the spirit realm. He knows how to commune there. He knows the weight now of what he has to do, and he's willing to take it on. This show, not only did he not run away, he just went out for a flight on Appa to kind of clear his head, because, man, this is a lot of pressure, isn't it? Man, I don't know if I can do this. I kind of just want to have fun. It's not even a runaway. It's just, I need to go out and think. And then while he's out, the attack happens, storm happens, and now he's trapped in the iceberg. But by the end of the episode, he knows the weight of his responsibilities. He's taking on the duties of the Avatar because of the loss of all the air people that he saw. Okay, well, there's your growth already done in one episode. What's he going to do for the rest of the season? And I feel like that's, again, it's like a lot of the writers nowadays want to have strong characters without realizing what makes strong characters interesting. It's the journey of how they get there. I know people have already talked about this, but in the live action Mulan, which I haven't admittedly seen, but I've heard she's already a fighter. She's already somebody that's like willing to, yeah, let's go. I'm ready to fight. She's been training, I think, as a fighter from a kid, is what I heard. And it makes it less interesting when she's already that good, when she goes and pretends to be a man and then ultimately manages to stand up to him and takes on that role and becomes one of the best fighters. It's less interesting if she's already there. It's more interesting to watch the animated version where she's not as great of a fighter. She is struggling at first, but she takes on the responsibility. She learns, she trains, she gets better, and boom, now she's here. That's much more interesting of a character. For Sokka, to see him go from, he's a terrible person, he thinks women can't fight, he thinks they should just do all the chores, and the waterbender should be healing. I have no idea how they're going to handle the waterbending teacher at the North Pole, because if they've already taken out Sokka's sexism, I mean, his whole thing is women should only heal, they should not be fighters, and that's why he doesn't want to train Katara. Are they going to do that, or is that going to be too offensive? We can't offend anybody, guys. We can't have people who think bad things because, ooh, that would be awful. And then Katara shows him what's what, and then he realizes, oh, you know what? Never mind. Maybe I was wrong. Are we not going to do that? Are we just going to have him be like, oh, yeah, I don't mind training women. It's just more so, Katara, I just don't think you're ready. I don't think you're ready to take it. Is that what it's going to be? Because I swear if that's it, it's so much less interesting. So yeah, a little bit of a rant there, but definitely that change with Aang for me. It takes down Aang's character so much, and I'm really worried where the rest of the season is going to go with him, because I feel like we've already reached the point of where he was at the end of the first season, where he's ready to be the Avatar. He's ready to take on that responsibility, and that's just not interesting for him to figure it out so quickly. The other change, it's a bit more of a minor one, but for me, I think it's kind of a big change, and I bet it was done for time's sake, and also probably budget, because the effects of the Avatar and the power of the Avatar is probably something that costs them a lot of money to showcase that. So they're probably saving it for that last scene when he finds the bodies of all the air nomads. But the scene where Zuko captures him and then he gets off the ship, I don't like the fact that he didn't change into the Avatar state during that, because that's one of the things that kind of gets Zuko on this really self-destructive path. Because obviously he's already been exiled for years. He's hunted down the Avatar. He thinks this is the way to get his honor back. We know all of that. But I think him seeing the power of the Avatar in that first episode, or I think it was the second episode, but him seeing that sort of showcased to him, crap, I'm so far behind. Like, I thought I was ready for this. I've been training, and then Aang changes into the Avatar state, and boom, we're done. Like, that's basically it. He realizes how far behind the Avatar he is, and it puts him on this extra self-destructive journey. Like, where he's already been so focused and duty-driven to where we already see a lot of the crew hates him already, which makes sense. This is where, in my opinion, him seeing Aang's power drives him further down the rabbit hole to the point where it's basically, I don't know, it's not even so much just hurting the people around him anymore. Now it's hurting himself, because he is so adamant that he needs to get stronger that he's not focused on anything else really. And I think it makes it much more interesting for Zuko, at least in my opinion, if he sees that power firsthand, not just hears about it. So it's a minor change, and maybe he'll see it soon anyway, but I know why it was changed to be that way, why it was just Aang gets away, and then they managed to get him on Appa, and then Katara blocks the fire shot. I know why they did that, but I feel like seeing Zuko embarrassed by the power of the Avatar almost, it adds a little extra layer for me. Because in this scenario now, basically Zuko, he didn't really get embarrassed. It's not like he got beat real bad. He just shot a bolt of fire, knocked him out of the sky, but then they caught him and they shot another one that got blocked by water, and that was kind of it. He didn't get knocked around like he did in that animated show. So those are the only two changes that for me kind of took this show down. The rest of them, I mean, not all of them were great, but a lot of them I could understand why they were done for time's sake. You know, because we have less episodes to tell the whole story, so we're kind of speeding things along. So Aang finding out what happened at the Southern Air Temple from Gran, I mean, that's purely for, well, we don't want to have a whole 10-15 minutes spent on him going to the Southern Air Temple, being like, hey, this is going to be so fun, guys, and then realizing all the skeletons are there and what happened. So we're just going to have him told about it. It does lessen the impact of the scene a bit, but I understand why. We have to get through that, so he has to find out about it and then see it firsthand. But on top of that, I do think the overall scene still works, even if he's been told previously what happened, because he still has to see it to really see the impact of what happened. So that's why I'm okay with certain changes like that. The final thing to talk about that's negative is, unfortunately, Gran herself. Because I gotta say, where I mean, I knew there was probably going to be a lot of exposition, but Gran seemed to be just the exposition machine. I swear every single one of her lines was just expositing something at Aang or at Sokka and Katara. It was almost kind of painful to watch her scenes, because you swear she was not human. The way she was reading her lines, it felt like, all right, so here's the information you need, Aang. She even did the whole title sequence, and I half expected her to continue. You know, 100 years later, my granddaughter found the Avatar named Aang, and although he's great with airbending, I fully expected it because of the way she was going through her lines. It was not great. Rest of the acting was really good for her character specifically, and I don't know if it was a directing thing or just the lines were that painfully expository that no actor could have made them work. Yeah, those were the roughest scenes, where any scene where she was in it and she was just basically giving us plot. But that's about it for all the negative stuff. Some of the changes that were more positive, in my opinion, is showing some of the stuff that happened in the past. Obviously, most of it's not anything we haven't seen before. We did see some of the Aang's life at the Air Temple. We did see his relationship with Gyatso. All of that was really well done. I think getting to see Sozin's comment and getting to actually see Sozin use it, I think is a really awesome scene. And seeing all the build up, seeing the starting with the Earthbender trying to get the information about the plans, and then finding out that was apparently part of the plan, it's really clever. And honestly, it sets up for some really fun action scenes that showcases this show is doing a good job with its bending. It's not the cheap 6 guys doing little marching and then throwing a little pebble. Like, that's it. There's a lot more than that. So I think that was a really clever setup, because we didn't really get to see much of the actual start of the war in the original show. We did see a little bit of it whenever we got to see some of Roku's backstory, but I think overall this really showcases not only the power of the firebenders on the day of the comet, because we don't really get to see much of that in the show. You know, we got to see one basically the final episode whenever we're seeing them scorch the earth. But even then, we don't get to see that much. This was a really cool showcase to show the airbenders really powerful, can't stand up to the power of the firebenders on the day of the comet. So really good setup there. Really brutal too. I was not expecting this. I mean, it still is technically a kid's show, but it's not really portrayed that way. It's portrayed a little bit more adult. We're seeing actual dead bodies. We're seeing people being burned alive. One guy said ass. I mean, it's definitely more of a young adult show at this point than it is a kid's show. And on that aspect, I can understand a little bit why they'd want to streamline the journey, because that is one thing that I do think changing Aang's personality and the fact that he's accepting his duty, I do think this is going to lead to the streamlined version of the show where it's not, hey, let's go do this and let's go do this because it's fun and I want to have fun. It's more so, okay, well, we have to go learn all the elements. We have to have him learn it quickly because we got to get this story going. I don't mind the streamlined journey, especially if you're going to make it a bit more of an adult type show. But at the same time, I still feel like that change, it's not really justified when you can still have him being a kid who maybe is reluctant. Like, yes, he's going on this journey because there's a lot of pressure on him to, and if he doesn't, then people are going to be disappointed, and he doesn't want to disappoint people. But to have him just basically be like, no, this is my duty, this is what I have to do, and accept it right here, I think that's where my frustration is. But yeah, I do think that streamlined journey will play a lot better since this is more of an adult type of show. And I do think that change, especially for live action, I do think it's welcome, because part of why the animated show does work better as a kid's show is because the animation suits itself for that. You can be really goofy, you can have a lot of fun to make the kids laugh, while still having a lot of the elements and themes that make the adults enjoy it for what a great show it is and how well written it is. But I think overall, a lot of the stuff that remains the same, the characters so far are doing a really good job. The actors are playing their parts really well. I like Iroh so far as well, because he's a character that I wasn't sure how he was going to translate to live action, and the guy playing him is doing a good job so far. I like just how he can go from giving these wise words of wisdom to, all right, how about some jasmine tea? It's Iroh so far. I think Zuko, good angsty personality. I do wish the makeup department went a little heavier on the scar, because I just feel like that scar should be really pronounced, and it's there, like you can see it, but it just looks very small and kind of light colored, like it's a very light red. I'm like, no, make it dark red, dark brown, like real char to it. Like really go in with the special effects on that. But oh well, it's a tiny thing, tiny nitpick. I think Katara and Sokka both doing really good so far. We're seeing, because Sokka, a lot of people associate him with being the funny guy, but he does start off as like very, I'm the leader of the tribe, I need to take care of this place and all of that. The comedy at first with him comes from how serious he is and how constantly incapable of handling situations he is, even though he thinks he's capable. It's not until later that he becomes a lot more the joke teller, the lighthearted character. So I think so far it's exactly what I want to see from him. I think Katara so far is played pretty well. I think she's got room to grow, but I think Katara as a character also has room to grow. And then the kid playing Aang, I think he's doing a good job with it. He's got that kind of lighthearted personality. And I think in the serious moments, he brings some good emotion to it. So yeah, all the characters so far, well cast and well acted, outside of Gran, of course. And the final thing to talk about that I'm really enjoying is the music, because it's interesting how the music is the same, basically. Like they're using a lot of the same melodies that the original show had. But where the original show, it did feel like they were a lot more big and bombastic, like the that little theme whenever things look like they're going wrong. In the show, it was, because I watched it recently, not only to prepare for this, but also there's trivia coming up. And on top of that, I want to watch Korra, because I've not actually seen all the way through. I might do a review for Korra as well. We'll see. But that theme is very loud. It's very in your face. And it's something that I remember hearing just several times throughout the show whenever things were about to go bad. Here, I heard it a few times, but it wasn't very in your face. It was kind of subtle in the back of it a little bit. And I feel like that sort of shows the more mature elements Where in a kid's show, you have to be loud and bombastic. You have to be really in your face, like, oh, here's music to tell you this is a bad scene. With this, you just have like the little subtle in the background. It adds that element of there's an unease, and it's not really clear, in my opinion, why there's unease. And I think that, again, there's a maturity to that I think really elevates this to another level outside of just being a kiddie type show. We'll see if that plays in its hand or not. I'm, again, cautiously optimistic. I think there's definitely potential here to have something that admittedly is not necessary, because why try to remake a show that was nearly perfect anyway? A lot of it is, well, we want to see a live action version of it. How cool would it be to see a lot of these effects and a lot of the fights and bending and all of that? How cool would that be to see it in live action? I don't really know what they're going to do to change it to make it their own thing. But I think all in all, it's a pretty solid start, and we'll see where it goes. I still do have my concerns with Sokka, with Aang's character changes, but I think if they can find a way to make them interesting in other ways, if they can find ways to give them room to grow in other areas, they could still be interesting characters. I'm just really worried because the two changes that they made for Sokka and Aang are kind of two of the biggest character developments in the first season. So we'll see. But with all that being said, on to the second episode. I'll see you there. And now episode 2, Warriors. Pretty solid. Pretty solid episode. I think this show is definitely starting off on the right foot. Once again, there are still problems, and I will address those first again. Yeah, as far as changes are concerned, like I said, the whole Sokka and Suki thing was something I was a little worried about, knowing that Sokka was not going to have these opinions of girls as not being fighters and stuff. And to be fair, I really don't buy their relationship as well in this one. I think I know what they're going for here. It's not so much that Suki sees him and then sees him change and that's what causes her to fall in love with him. It's more so because she's not used to seeing the outside world, and she's basically just been stuck in this village and she doesn't know a lot of people outside of the village. Somebody new comes into her life and she's like, ooh, who is this? The problem that I have with it is up until the point where she sees him spying on them training to try to see if he can maybe learn some stuff from them, there's nothing really likable about him. You know, and it's not like he suddenly changes. He's interested in their fighting because after the fight that he had with her, he kind of got embarrassed a little bit. That to me, even before that though, she was kind of looking at him like, oh, okay, who's this? And there wasn't really anything interesting about him. I mean, she walked in on him when he had his shirt off and saw his muscles, and am I really supposed to feel like this is a good relationship that's born from, oh, okay, he looks pretty good with the shirt off? That's not as interesting as, look at this douchebag. Like, he really thinks he's that tough. Okay, you know what? Maybe there's something deeper there. He's showing a willingness to learn. He's showing that he's humble. Maybe there is something. We don't get any of that in this. She doesn't really see him as much because he's talking all big and kind of almost comparing her role of warrior to what he's doing in the South Pole, which is essentially glorified doorman in a way. But she very clearly is offended by how he's so nonchalantly talking about the role of a warrior, because she sees this duty as a higher calling. And so that upsets her. And then they have their moment in the woods after she sees him with his shirt off, and she kind of shows him up. And it was a weird scene because it almost felt like she was flirting with him, but he didn't take it very well because he's getting his ass handed to him. I don't know. It felt like an odd scene because it felt like she already kind of liked him there. Like, that, why? Again, just because you saw him with his shirt off? So when that moment comes, when he does start watching the training like he's interested, and then she starts training him, that scene didn't really feel that impactful to me. And ultimately, whenever she does have that moment with him, I'm just like, I mean, this could have, it's a decent moment at the end, and there is that slight connection after the training scene, but I feel like the build up to it was just not very well done. I feel like you could have set it up a lot better where maybe she is intrigued by the people of the outside world, and he does sort of start off on the wrong foot by kind of bragging about himself and coming off as an arrogant asshole, but it's not until he kind of humbles himself a bit and look, I'm sorry, you know, feel like I'm failing as a leader and a protector of my village. Like, he could have come to her with that information and just like, I want to get better. And that's the moment where she could look at him and go, okay, you know what? Maybe I misjudged him. At first, I thought he was just arrogant. I thought he was just full of himself and not really that impressive. But now that I'm seeing he is willing to humble himself and show this deeper side, okay. It doesn't, if you're going to take the sexism out of it, at least still have him humble himself. But that never really happens. She humbles him by whooping his ass, and he just kind of watches from the outside like, oh, okay, what's going on in there? I'm kind of interested. There's no scene where we really see him go, look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about how I came off. I really don't think that highly of myself. I feel like there's just that missed opportunity there that, to me, where Suki and Sako were the best of the original show as far as relationships are concerned, in this one, I'm just not a fan of how this began. I feel like it's not nearly as strong because the only reason she seemingly took an interest in him to begin with is because she saw him with his shirt off. I'm sorry, attraction is only one small part of it. Yes, you have to be attracted to the other person if you're going to be in a relationship with them, but to really fall in love with somebody, there's got to be a deeper connection there. And while sometimes, yes, it is, oh, I think they're attractive. From the role of Suki, from what she, like her character should be, for her, the duty is to the village. Yes, she can be interested in what's going on outside and be interested by these people that are coming in from the outside world that she's never experienced, but to have her go, oh, he's a good looking dude, that to me doesn't feel like Suki anymore. Now this feels like just every other strong female character that I've seen, where they're strong and they're independent, they don't need no man until some attractive dude comes into their life. Like, okay, maybe I do need a man. Not Sokka doing anything to really make himself look good. I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of shallow and very weak as far as the connection is concerned. Outside of that, most everything else worked fine. I do feel like there was a missed opportunity. They did kind of make up for it, but whenever all the kids are like, hey, Aang, are you really an airbender? Really wanted him to whip out some marbles and start spinning them. God, that would have been so funny. Granted, they did still have the moment he hops on his little air ball and then runs into the statue, just like the original opening. Nice little callback there, but I feel like the marbles just would have I would have died laughing. I really would have. And maybe that would have been for the best. Anyways, yeah, I think the stuff with Zhao and Zuko, I think it's pretty well set up. Zhao so far is not interesting to me yet. I feel like he was a little bit more intimidating in the original show than he is here. We'll see. I do like some of his and Iroh's back and forth. I feel like you can see where Iroh doesn't really know much about him, or at least seemingly isn't letting on that he knows that much about him. Zhao clearly knows who Iroh is, and he's already showing some of his disdain with these compliments that he's giving him. And I feel like that little rivalry is already kind of starting to build, and I do like that. So, but yeah, I just think Zhao in this one, I don't know, some of his performance is seems a little bit more underhanded than it is ruthless, because I think that's the feel that I got from Zhao in the original, is a lot of the underhanded stuff he was doing. It felt like he wasn't even really trying to put on a nice persona in front of other people, like in front of Iroh and Zuko. It felt more so like he knowingly was like, hey, I'm not even going to pretend. I'm going to say this stuff that sounds like I'm a nice person and I'm trying to help. But we all three of us know I'm not. I'm not that type of person. I'm not going to help you out. I'm going to do what's best for me. So that's where I feel like there's kind of a difference there in character, and maybe that'll play pretty well with the current style of the show and where it's going, being a little bit more adult. But yeah, I do find myself preferring the original show's Zhao more than this guy, but hey, we'll give him a chance, see what they decide to do with this character from here. I do also really like the scene with Kyoshi, and it's even funnier just because that the one thing that I really remember about Kyoshi from the original show is she is a lot more ruthless. You know, she's very clearly okay with killing whoever. It felt like she was very much a duty-driven type of avatar, where a lot of the other stuff didn't matter. Honestly, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but I wouldn't even be surprised out of all the avatars, at least recently previous avatars, I wouldn't be surprised if she's the one that didn't have any sort of family or offspring. Like, we know Roku had at least a wife and kid. I would not be surprised if Kyoshi didn't, because she was just like, no, it's all about the avatar. That's the only thing that matters. And this scene just sort of furthers that idea of her in my mind, and it just makes me think back to the final episode where Aang's calling on all the avatars, and she's just like, I killed whoever that guy was, like, to save peace, and she disappears. I knew I shouldn't have asked Kyoshi. Just, yeah, she's a really fun, I think, counterbalance to Aang, where Aang is so fun-loving and free and just not wanting to hurt anybody. She is the exact opposite. She is duty-driven. She is like, I'll kill whoever to save the peace, because that's what the Avatar's duty is. And really, it does get me excited to see him interact with Roku, because I want to see how Roku's portrayed in this show, because he was kind of the in-between, where he saw the duty and the importance of the Avatar, but he also realized that Aang's a kid, and he tries to, I think, reason with him a bit more than what we saw with Kyoshi here, where she's basically just almost could see her just picking Aang up and just start smacking him across the face like, you are the Avatar. Just, oh, she's pretty terrifying, and I love that. So outside of that, I think the rest of it, the village leader, Suki's mother, I can't remember if the village leader in the original show, I know it was a guy that they interacted with more. I can't remember if that was her father or not, but having it be her mother, be the leader of the village, having her mother be very closed to outsiders, that whole story is something we've obviously seen before. I do think they're trying to show where what they talked about in the first episode. Katara was saying, people don't go to other countries now. Like, we don't get outsiders. This kind of showcases more of that, showing how once the Fire Nation invaded, everybody kind of became untrusting, didn't really spread out, branch out outside of their own cultures. And that's kind of a good point in the show, talking about how all cultures come together and have that blend of understanding and borrowing from each other and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's a good setup. But other than that, I mean, once again, good acting, music as well. The theme whenever Kyoshi came in and started whooping ass, that theme was really, it was upbeat, it was intense. I had a good time with that one. The action as well, just really, really good. And getting to see a lot of these effects done so well really makes me glad, because God, the movie's effects were so bad. But yeah, I think it's a really solid start, first 2 episodes. Again, maybe a little too streamlined, maybe a couple of changes that do lessen some of the impact of characters or scenes, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe Suki, once she comes back, maybe they'll change some stuff that takes this current plot, takes the current way that the story is going and these characters are going, and maybe it'll add something new. And again, like I talked about with Aang, maybe this change where he's more duty driven and there's not the growth of him learning to accept his responsibility, maybe they'll do something different. They already are showing more of a lean toward the guilt of what happened, and there was guilt, obviously, because he ran away in the first one, whereas in this one, like I said, it wasn't really so much of a running away, but he still feels guilty for not being there to save all these people. And it almost kind of feels like they're adding an element of he's scared of his own power, because we didn't really get that sense in the original. Like, in the original show, the only time he was really scared of that power was when it came to firebending, and we saw he accidentally burns Katara, and he's almost scared to firebend after that. So there was a little bit of an element of that, and of course him not wanting to kill kind of played into that as well, but we never really saw this sense of, even when he's airbending, the concern of hurting people and the concern of being too powerful. So for that's a little bit of a different change that may play into, maybe it's not so much he's scared of accepting responsibility of the Avatar, it's more so he's scared of the power that comes with it and what he might do with that power. But along that same line, I mean, they've already shown, there was the scene with Gyatso talking about how he doesn't want the power, which is what will make him a great Avatar. So I don't know if they're really going to go that route and try to show that maybe Aang does have a certain side to him that does make him a bit more ruthless and does maybe corrupt him with the power. But I just don't feel like that makes sense. But we'll see. It does definitely leave room open to, again, have him grow in a different way. I guess it's not a change that I think is definitely going to ruin everything and make it to where there's just no coming back. But I will say they are going to have to find a way to make this change make sense in the context of the show, because if not, then you haven't got a main character that is that interesting, in my opinion. We'll see what they decide to do with it. So far, I'm on board though. I'm having a good time, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the rest of the season's going to go. So with all that being said, that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these first 2 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Last Airbender reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of reviews on there, as well as a couple of Let's Plays, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you all later. Peace out.